Jack, quick moment of your time, please. How does it feel to finally discover the Villa Talks podcast?
Best day of my life.
Great, there you have it. Back to you at the studio. Hello and welcome to this special edition of the Villa Talks podcast, a special edition of the late night ramble. We're recording this on a Thursday lunchtime, mainly because Jugsy wanted better lighting because we're doing a video for the first time on YouTube. But I'm joined by the regular crew. You can finally see their faces and see what our ugly mugs look like. We've got Chadsy. Hello Chadsy, how you doing, mate? You all right?
Hi mate, very well, thank you.
Jugsy.
What's up, Bugs? How you doing?
All right,
yeah,
mate. Good, mate. Good. And Dekkers, mate, you good? Can you hear us okay?
Yeah, I can hear you. All right, boys.
Good. Well, this is going to be a special edition. We're finally getting round to recording the special episode around Black History Month, and it's coming to the end of the month, and we're going to delve deep into our top 5 black players to play for Aston Villa. We're also going to preview the Southampton game on Sunday as well. And we'll go into a bit of detail around that as well. But firstly, we're going to talk about the top 5 black players. So we've had a bit of a discussion on WhatsApp already. It's been a hotly debated, so this one should be interesting, and should be some interesting things coming out in this episode. We've all got a bit of a consensus on our first 3 players, and it's just the remaining 2 that we're not too sure about. So we're all going to take turns and pick our players who we think should be the final 2. But before we start that, just to confirm who our first 3 are and which 3 players we've agreed are the 3 of the best. And this is going to be no order at all. It's going to be top 5 in any order. So the 3 that we've picked are Paul McGrath, obviously, for obvious reasons. And we'll go into detail about each of these players and why we've picked them. Dwight Yorke, and the last one is Ashley Young. So they're the 3 that we've all decided that make everyone's lists, albeit some of us might not have seen Paul McGrath in his pomp. We've all decided you just can't leave him out. We're going to go in each player in a little bit of detail, like I said, and then debate the last 2. So before we start debating, let's go through the 3 players that we've picked. Chadsy, do you want to start?
Just to confirm that, just to add a caveat, it's Premier League era only, isn't it? Because obviously... Yeah,
that's a good point. Yeah, so Premier League era only because, well, I'm the oldest here, and the first season I started watching was 93, 94. So before that, I know there's plenty of black players. Tony Daly, for example, was coming towards the end of his Villa career, but had a great spell at Villa before that. Mark Walters, other players that have played for Aston Villa before that we just haven't seen, so we can't give a judgment on. So that's a bit of a caveat to start off with. So if you're going to disagree, obviously just remember that as well. And it's fine to disagree, obviously. This is the whole point of this. But before we start and go into the last 2, let's talk about the 3 that we have picked. And Chadsy, do you want to focus on Dwight Yorke first and explain why we've picked him?
Yeah. Yorkie holds some great memories for me personally, but also some pretty bad memories from when he moved on. I think quite vivid memories of being in Spain with my dad in the summer when he left for United. We were staying on a campsite in Salou, and my dad walked in through the red top newspaper on the kitchen table, and it was Yorkie holding up a United shirt on the back page. And I remember actually crying. I think I was 10 or 11. I remember actually crying because he'd left. That's how much I loved him, and I know the Villa fans loved him at the time. Supremely talented footballer, wasn't he? A pretty special player. He had that magic. He had the skill. He could score goals, left foot, right foot, good in the air for a guy that wasn't massive, and had a pretty big impact on the club. I don't know, it's up for debate, obviously, but I'd say he's probably the most talented in terms of skillful player we've had up until Jack. Just on the ball, what he could do, the way he could beat players, and some of the goals he scored were just special. And he had, coming from Trinidad, he had that sort of aura about him, didn't he, of the unknown, and the fact that it did feel like we had something special that other clubs didn't have. Just looking at his stats, he scored 66 goals for us over 208 games, but in his first 3 or 4 years, he was played mainly as a winger, wasn't he, in the early 90s?
Yeah.
He couldn't get a game up front with Atkinson and Saunders being the key partnership. But then in the mid-90s, he really established himself as the main man. Scored 15 goals in 95-96, including one in the final against Leeds. The next year, 14, and then 12 goals in 97-98, including a couple in that UEFA Cup run, which is the season where he obviously got his move to United at the end of it. Just when I was doing a bit of research before, I couldn't believe that, I had no memory that he didn't play in the 94 Cup final.
Yeah.
You know, he won 2 trophies, but he didn't actually play in that 94 final. He talks about how he was shocked and gutted that he didn't play in that game. And absolutely quality player for Villa. And I found it quite sad the way a few years later when he moved on to Blackburn and Blues and the whole 10 turned against him and it got a bit personal. And, I'd look back on him with fond memories and try and forget those few years where it came a bit nasty, to be honest, because he's obviously still got a soft spot for the club. He always throws his hat in the ring when the manager's job comes up. So, it gave us some great times and absolute bangers to be in the top 5.
Great, Graham Fenton, wasn't it, that played in the 94 final? I don't know if you remember that. It might be a bit young, but he was sort of a bit of a shock inclusion by Atkinson. And obviously it worked because we won the game. But I think York was expecting himself to be ahead of someone like him. But yeah, what a player. And just the way he played the game, the collars up. I just remember in the AST kit, AST Computers kit. That's when I think of him. That's what I think about.
Long sleeves as well.
Long sleeves, cycling shorts, underneath shorts. Yeah. I just remember. And Mizuno, sponsored by Mizuno as well. Just those little things you just remember as a kid because all that kind of stuff meant so much more to you because it was just like this amazing player and one of the best players in the league. And you saw that with going to Man United when what he did there with Andy Cole. It showed you the ability he had.
I've been lucky enough to speak to a few people that knew him personally at the time as well. So a few people on the cricket scene that were friends with Brian Lara. Brian Lara was playing for Warwickshire at the time, and him and Yorkie, I think they got up to quite a bit of mischief off the pitch as well during that period. So I've heard some good stories about him as a character off the pitch.
They went the same school, didn't they? I think.
I don't know, mate.
They were good mates.
Him
mates,
and is it Shaka Hislop?
Maybe,
I'm sure they were.
Maybe.
They might have been at the same school.
Might be, yeah. But they're all good mates, weren't they? Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
But I was saying, he was the sort of consistent 20-goal a season striker, wasn't he, for Villa? And we've never really had that since, where someone could do it season in, season out. And he could do everything up front. I thought he scored all types of goals. So whether he dropped deep to link up play or was that sort of fox in the box, he did everything. And everything he wanted as a striker, York had. So he ticked all the boxes for me.
In terms of quality, he obviously went on to prove himself at United. That step up made it seem easy, didn't he? He went on to win the treble, Champions League, and his partnership with Andy Cole just shows the type of player that if you play with better players and get that opportunity, that your talents can really flourish. So, absolute superstar, really. Yeah,
he was. He was a special player, and a player that most fans of our age will love forever. I think you're right. It did end in bad note, with Gregory saying he would have shot him and things like that. I always remember that. But it's one of those things. When he was at Villa, he was an amazing player. In the first few seasons, like you say, didn't get involved too much in the first team, and he was sort of a bit part player. But after that, he was our best player, and probably you could argue probably our best Premier League player ever, maybe, which we can debate. But he's definitely up there. So I think without a shadow of doubt, he needs to be in that top 5 list, and I think we can all agree that he's in that list on merit, definitely. Next player, Ashley Young. Some people might find this contentious, but I'd agree with this, and we've all agreed with this. Ashley Young, a fantastic record for us, a part of an era that was quite successful for us, albeit not with trophies, but in terms of performances and how we did in the league, and just a general feeling of a good team and a team you can get behind. And Ashley Young was a massive part of that. Jugsy, do you want to just touch upon Ashley Young and why you think he deserves to be in the top 5 list?
Yeah, sure. Youngie for me was probably one of my favourite Villa players, and a player who one season for Villa. So, as you mentioned, he was part of that Martin O'Neill era where we were a good side and we beat some of the top teams and we finished in the top 6. But I thought Young was integral to that. He was the go-to player for us during that period. And he was that player where, when we were at Villa Park, as soon as he got the ball, you sort of get up off your chair. And he had that sort of reaction to fans where he always made something happen. And on that wing, he worked quite hard as well. I think his work rate was underrated, where he'd be up and down that wing. Yeah. But all the good memories and all the good times from that era Young was quite integral to that. So whether he was doing that trademark cut back onto his right, crossing it in for Gabby's headers against Blues and United, Youngie was always involved. And he, in terms of his talent, he improved massively at Villa. When he started off, obviously he was playing off Carew. When we signed him in the January window, he was sort of playing as a second striker. And when he got that move to the left-hand side, he just became a different player. He was probably the most dangerous winger during that period in the Premier League, and I think it proved where he got recognition, not just from obviously Villa fans and teammates. He was the PFA Young Player of the Year, was PFA Team of the Season 2 years running, so just shows what other players and other managers and teams thought about him, where they rated him very highly, and he was our danger man. And as I mentioned, it was just consistency. I mean, his goal record was 37 goals, 59 assists in 190 games, so his goal contribution was like 1 in 2 games, which is great for a top 6 side like Villa were at that point. It just shows what influence he had on the pitch. He took all the set pieces. He was that player that if we were struggling in a game, O'Neill's instructions were like, get the ball to Ashley Young, he'll make something happen. And generally he did. He did turn games for us and was that match winner. And I know O'Neill sort of was one of his favourites, teacher's pet, if you like, and he called him world class, but I thought he was world class during that period, and he deserved his move to United. And I know a lot of Villa fans don't hold him into the best sort of high regard in terms of they think he's a bit of a diver, but during that period he showed loyalty. He played for Villa 4.5 seasons, didn't seek a move out too soon. I mean, did a stint at Villa and tried to push us into that top 4 sort of. But when that United move came, I think it was right for both parties to let him go, and we got a decent £80 million fee from him. So he did well at United initially, and then I think injuries, he struggled on that. But I thought, Youngie, I think, is one of the best players I've seen in a Villa shirt. Certainly probably the best winger. It was exceptional for me. I'm not sure what you guys think of that.
Yeah, no, I think it's hard to argue against that. You know, I remember that second season, Martin O'Neill season, that first season where we wore the Nike kit, where he got like something like the 15, 16 assists in that season. When we were scoring goals left, right, and centre, you know, he was a massive part in the season after the game against Everton. We scored the winner. You know, those memories. I mean, Dekkers, you're slightly younger than all of us, and that was probably a good time for you as being a Villa fan. Obviously, we saw some of the earlier successes in the League Cup and stuff. But I mean, what's your memories of Ashley Young, and what do you remember about him as a player?
I remember like the whole end singing his name before he was signed. So I forget, what year was he signed? What year did we sign Ashley Young?
It would have been 2007, was it? January 2007?
2007, yeah. 2007.
So I was still, like, that was sort of when we were getting excited about a player that we hadn't even signed yet. So I knew he was going to be something special, really. And he came into an exciting side, so I'll always remember him fondly.
I mean, what do you remember of him as a player? I mean, what do you think his best attributes were as a winger?
I wouldn't say he's not like your typical sort of fast-paced winger. Like, I'm not sure how he would get on nowadays in sort of like a front three, but in the Martin O'Neill days when we were playing 4-4-2, he was perfect. His delivery was spot on, and playing in when sort of like John Carew is the target man. Yeah. With somebody like Ashley Young on the pitch, he can put it on point. For players like Carew.
I think he's a really good example, isn't he, of somebody that benefited from the players around him. It's like sometimes players get judged on their careers, get judged on their output and their goals and assists and things like that. But a lot of the time, it's luck as to what manager you get. You know, you play with, whether they have confidence in you, whether they give you the sort of blank canvas to go out and do what you can do, your teammates. And I think Villa at that period found a real special connection, didn't they, between Gabby, Young, Carew, and it just seemed to click. So a lot of his assists were simply Carew headers or flick-ons or tap-ins that Gabby put him across the front of the goal. And that bond, they all three players sort of benefited from that, didn't they? So, you know, like Jake says, if he was playing for us under Alex McLeish or Paul Lambert with a different type of striker, with Andy Vine or something like that, you know, perhaps not looked on so fondly. So a lot of time we have to judge players on the bigger picture, not just how lucky they were to have certain teammates or play in certain eras.
Yeah, and I also think that his partnership with Gareth Barry on the left-hand side for those first couple of years was massive as well, because they linked up so well. Yeah. You had Petrov or Ryakoka, who and Sidwell to a point as well, who would play in midfield and sort of be the protection, if you like. But then Gareth Barry was allowed to bomb forward and link up with Young. And I remember goals against Bolton and Reading and other teams like that, where those two linked up well on the left-hand side against Man City in that first game when Gabby scored a hat-trick. They were running riot. And you're right, he had good players around him. But I also think with Ashley Young, a big part of his game that you don't really see nowadays is the pace he put his cross in.
Yeah.
How he crossed the ball. He'd cut back inside and put it in with a lot of pace.
Whip it, wouldn't it?
Whip it, and very difficult. And now I think you see a lot of these floaty crosses or like sort of flicks to the back post, and they're just not as effective. And I'm surprised you don't see it. Like someone like Al Ghazi, for example, who plays well from the left-hand side and probably prefers it. He's got that ability, but he never really shows it. And you just want him to, when he does cut inside, you want him to just try and whip it in as quickly as possible. Just if you get any sort of flick on or anything like that, it goes in. It's just you don't really see that these
harder
days.
to defend as well.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think during that period we were a threat for set pieces. So obviously we had likes of Dunn, Collins, and centre backs of that sort of height with Lawson as well. But Young was integral to that. He was good on free kicks, good on corners, and he did show some versatility. Yeah. So he played on the right, played a free role under Houllier. So remember when we signed Darren Bent, Youngie was playing as a number 10 really. So he showed he was adaptable. And yeah, I think he had everything. He had sort of that pace and that technical ability as well. So. And he worked hard for the team. I think that was one thing that was probably underrated. I mean, he always tracked back, helping his left back.
We've only got to look at what he's doing now. Yeah, he's still playing left back for Inter Milan.
Yeah.
He's converted himself into a defensive player. And just going back to this, I remember that period vividly. That was probably the last time, 10 years ago, that when we'd get a corner, I'd be excited thinking this was a goal-scoring opportunity. Like with Larson doing exactly what Jugsy said. I thought a goal was coming when we got a corner, and I think that season Larson scored 5 or 6, and I remember the goal against Ajax, and his delivery was just absolutely spot on.
Bang on. Yeah. So I mean, there's not much more to say on that. And Ashley Young, I think he deserves a chance there. Again, one of our best ever Premier League players, and in terms of goal contributions, Jugsy's already mentioned, but also just his overall attitude and willingness to win and how he drove us on. And it's just a shame that we didn't get that top 4 spot and we didn't win the League Cup. That would have capped it off and definitely made him one of the biggest legends in Villa history. And I still think he's a legend. Don't get me wrong, but I think in this list he deserves his place. And then the final player that we're going to touch upon, I think there's no real arguments about this one, is potentially one of our best ever players, if not our best player, arguably. A player that is held in elite status, hero status. Songs are sung about him. Paul McGrath's song. It's one of the first songs we sing at the ground when we play teams. And unfortunately, obviously, we can't be there at this present time. But I know all of us can't wait to get back in the ground and get back in the stadium and start singing those songs again. And Paul McGrath, what a legend he was. And I was lucky to see him play. I was quite young, so my first season was 93, 94. And my first memories of that really are the League Cup win against Man United. And he was amazing that day. He was so good. And every player had to be amazing that day, but him especially against Mark Hughes, who was an excellent striker at that point in time, one of the best strikers in the league. And like Kanchelskis on the wing, and he was covering for the fullbacks and playing alongside Sean Teal, Kevin Richardson, Ray Houghton, Andy Townsend, those types of players. That was a really great team that we had. And the season before that, we'd finished second in the league. And unfortunately, I remember bits, but I don't remember too much. But he was PFA Player of the Year or Players Player of the Year, was in the PFA Team of the Year, had an amazing World Cup in '94 with Italy. And I remember those games. I remember that win and how he played in that game. He was just a man mountain. He was amazing. He was decent on the ball, but he was quick. He anticipated things well. He was a monster in defence. He won everything in the air, and he was just he made defending look effortless. He just knew what he was doing, and he, considering the amount of injuries he had and the knee injuries he had, and the fact that he didn't train, and obviously it came out afterwards with the autobiography. Back from the brink, the problems we had with alcohol. He had all those problems going on in the background, and still, managed to week in, week out perform consistently and be one of the best players. And even a couple of seasons before, in his first season, we finished second behind Liverpool as well. And I don't remember that at all. Obviously, I was about 4 years old then. But it shows you the level of consistency he had. He's won 2 League Cups with us. He's finished second twice and came close to winning the league both times. And that season against Man United, if 1 or 2 results went our way, that would have easily been the first Premier League win of the era and would have been Aston Villa. So it's a shame that didn't happen. But overall, as a player, Chadsy is hard to. I know you didn't see too much of him, but it's hard to argue against him, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't remember seeing too much of him live, to be honest. I did watch him play, but I was very young. But I was brought up on the 92-93 season review video. I've still got it now. I must have watched it 100 times. The season we finished second, and there's a big piece on that about him obviously being PFA Player of the Year and all the praise that he gets in that, and some of his performances stand out. And I know he scored a few goals that season as well. And you've only got to look at what his teammates, players, managers of other clubs say about him. You've only got to look at what Ferguson says about him to realise what a talent and what a player he was. So I'm glad that we're talking about somebody that actually was not only excellent for us, but managed to achieve a bit of silverware for us as well. So he sort of capped it off and got the recognition he deserves by actually putting something in the trophy cabinet. Club legend, and like you say, we still sing his name to this day. So probably goes in at number 1. For most people.
Hard to argue against that. I mean, unless you boys got anything to add, I think there's not too much to say more about that, about Paul McGrath.
Yeah.
It's an obvious choice. Jugsy, do you have anything to add?
Just lastly, I think with football, it's evolved so much in the last sort of 20, 25 years, but he's a player now that would be at that Van Dijk status, I think, because he could do everything as a defender. He was physically fit, strong, quick, good on the ball, could pass it out right foot or left foot, and he would be sort of say if he was in modern football now, he'd be at that world class sort of top tier of defender. That's how good he was. So he's one of those defenders that, Rolls Royce kind of defender, and one that should be held to sort of high esteem, I'll say.
Yeah, and spot on. He's not only is he one of Villa's best ever players, probably, like I said, maybe the best ever player, but also one of the best ever Premier League defenders as well. And then you have this, the comparisons made with Terry and Ferdinand and Vidic and players like that. And don't get me wrong, they were amazing players and some of the best ever. But I think McGrath is definitely up there with them, and deserves that spot. So that's the first 3 that we've got, and we've got general consensus on that. So time for the debate now, really, and the last 2. So what we're going to do is we've all got our ideas of the last 2, but we're going to pick a player each and give our arguments for why we think they should be in that remaining 2 spots. We're going to go to Dekkers first. Dekkers is going to focus on one of his childhood icons, Dion Dublin, and give his ideas about why he should be in the last 2 spots. Dekkers, go for it, mate.
Yeah, I've gone with Dublin because he's at Villa 6 years. So it was a good stint. 155 appearances with 48 goals, so it's not a bad record.
Yeah.
A lot of those towards the end of his career. He converted into centre back as well. Yeah. Which I can't think of too many other players that would be good enough to do that, from striker to centre back. And then a couple of key moments. He was joint top goal scorer in the 97-98 season along with Michael Owen and Chris Sutton, but got left out the England squad.
Yeah.
Which shows how good he was, really. And then the famous neck break, and they thought he was going to be in a wheelchair for the rest of his life, and he came back 3 months later.
Yeah.
Still as good as he was before.
Yeah.
So I think that's a massive achievement for anybody.
Mm.
He had an explosive start as well. Like for Villa, he scored 7 in his first 3 games, including one on his debut. Personal one was an overhead kick against Southampton when he was playing centre back in front of the North Stand. That was years ago. And then a bit of a controversial point, but one that's always going to live long in the memory is the headbutt on Robbie Savage, which I think
deserve to go in just for that.
That's a legendary status, isn't it? Really, I think after that, but also on that, the next day I'd look into it. He called a meeting with the Villa players to apologise about his behaviour, because I know that he would have definitely regretted doing that. The type of person that he is. I've met him. He's a really nice bloke, and by the sounds of it, a really good professional. So, although something that I look back upon fondly, it is something that he would regret. So he was a good pro. So but so that's why I thought he was. So to be in there.
It's all valid points, and you're right. Yeah, we do look upon that with regret, but ultimately it did cost us that match, that headbutt. But you take
Robbie
it now.
Savage.
Yeah, you don't care now, do you? Really? But Dublin, you mentioned his start, and I'll let Chadsy sort of delve deeper into this. But I remember that start, and he was just, we sold York. We were a bit down in the dumps. I remember he'd gone to Man United. We'd bought Merson, and then we bought Dublin, and we were thinking, will they be good enough? Will they do the job? And obviously, at Coventry, Dublin, like you said, was joint top goal scorer, but he came in absolute house on fire. It was just unreal. It was just so good, and scored. And that first 3 games, it was unreal. And generally through his Villa career, he was always good for a goal, wasn't he, Chads?
Yeah, he made a massive impact at the club. Like you said, the club was looking for something to lift the spirits after York had left, and we needed a new sort of focal point, a new leader. And he was an experienced player. He'd done it at the lower levels of the Premier League. He'd kept Cov up sort of repeatedly for the last 2 or 3 seasons before that, almost single-handedly. And he, a bit like some of the players we've talked about for Villa that went on to get their move to United, he got a deserved move to Villa, and it's quite a controversial move around these ways. A lot of Cov fans that sort of despised him for making that move, but it was a natural step for him. And he made a massive impact at the club, and I just love the way a few players in that era, like him and Merson, fell in love with the club. They're still massive advocates of Villa. They're still big Villa fans to this day, and they still sort of bang the drum for Villa in the national media. So, Dion he made a special impact at the club whilst he was there in the early years, but he's sort of still making that impact now, if that makes sense. He's still very much an Aston Villa man. And I think that does influence people's opinions as well. It does make you more fond of him. And a quality player. And like Dekkers said, top scorer that season, but didn't go to World Cup. I think he was one of those that was very unlucky to play in an era of just England had, 10 unbelievable strikers. Robbie Fowler, Andy Cole, were likes of those guys weren't even getting a game, let alone Dion Dublin. So quality player. Yeah,
amazing player, good goal record. Obviously played centre back as Dekkers has said as well. Did a job there. Had that really bad neck injury, and came back in that semi-final against Bolton, scored that penalty as well. And we were awful that day, and we needed someone like him to come in and just finish the game off and get us through. Unfortunately, we didn't win the final, and that was, we don't need to delve too deep into that one. That was just a bad day. And I think we all look back at that day with a bit of regret, because that was a day that Chelsea were there for the taking. We just needed to perform on the day, and we didn't. Dublin, Jugsy, you've gone for a different choice as your player to go in for the last 2 reigning spots. Dublin, obviously one of the best strikers Villa had, but your choice is Benteke. And do you think he deserves to be in there ahead of Dublin?
Yeah, I believe so. I think you've got to judge Benteke on the players around him. obviously we had Lambert as manager, and we weren't investing too much money into the squad at that point, with Randy Lerner obviously tightening the purse strings. But yeah, I thought Benteke kept us up single-handedly in a couple of seasons, and his goal record was phenomenal. 49 goals, 101 games. So again, 1 in 2. For a team that was fighting relegation during that period was a remarkable achievement. And I think with Benteke, he exceeded our expectations. He wasn't like a Stan Collymore Dublin type of signing or Young type of signing. He was a player from the Belgian league, quite a young player, 21 I think when we signed him, and he just hit the ground running and had a great first season, and honestly was one of the toughest players to play against, I think, at that point for defenders, because he was physical, quite confident, and scored all types of goals, even though he was obviously quite tall and a bit of a target man for us. He was good on the ball, good with his feet as well. And yeah, as I said, when you judge it on the players around him, he was playing with the likes of Brett Holman and Andy Wyman, providing him with service, and he still managed to score sort of 15 goals in the season and things like that. So it just shows what an amazing player he was for Villa. And I know he didn't win a trophy for us, and we got to the FA Cup final, which was again a good achievement. But him having that influence on the team and delivering them goals made it possible that we were a Premier League side. Because otherwise, without him, we would have been relegated, I think, with Lambert. And yeah, so I think he's one that I would definitely want to put in my top 5s. And he's a player that exceeded Villa fans' expectations, and Villa fans adored him. And again, he's a player that I think would be in that top bracket in terms of strikers. Not probably at the level of Dwight York, but definitely top 3 or 4 strikers that we've had in the Premier League era.
Yeah. I mean, Benteke scored 19 goals in that first season, and no strikers really come close to that in the Premier League era. We're still waiting for someone to score 20 goals in the top division. Obviously, Abraham did it in the Championship, but no one else has come close since Peter Wirth, and he became the closest in a team that was pretty poor, like I said, with fighting relegation year in year out. So it's an interesting one, and one we can debate. And I definitely think he needs to be up there, and a potential option. Dublin, Benteke. We've had another player that we haven't talked about is Dalen Atkinson, who's was my first ever Aston Villa hero, and an amazing player, albeit it was only was sort of plagued by injuries a little bit and was in and out the side a little bit, but when he was on form, when he was on song, him and Dino were amazing together. And another player that should be mentioned, although I'm not quite sure if he makes the cut. I personally have him in, but I'm not sure what you guys think. And then the player that we haven't talked about, striker Villa, our Premier League all-time top goal scorer, Gabby. And this is one that's going to be hotly contested, I think. A lot of people now look at him back at fondly because of what he did against the Blues and what he did in the Premier League. Obviously, there was, when he was coming towards the end of his career, there was a bit of animosity towards him because of what happened with us getting relegated and his part he played in that, and what happened after that. So, for those reasons, this can be there's a bit of debate around this one. Chadsy, you're a big, massive Gabby fan, always have been. What give your thoughts on why you think he should be in this top 5 pick?
Yeah. Well, I don't think I need to say any more, mate. You said it. He's our all-time Premier League goal scorer. I'm not even sure why we're debating it. He's got to be in there for me. He's given us so much over the years. He scored 74 goals for the club and 34 assists as well, which is far more than I would have expected. 12-year Villa career, and in his prime, he was unrivalled. His pace and power. He obviously got 3 England caps because of it, and that was in an era again where they weren't exactly giving caps away like they do nowadays. But I think my opinion, and I'm quite biased in the fact that I was lucky enough to be there really at all his milestone moments. I was there. I experienced the ecstasy of all of those moments that he gave us, and there are so many. So maybe my opinion is swayed by that. But for me, that's what football's all about. It's about memories. It's about celebrations. It's about looking back on that day when that happened all those years ago, rather than generally going over on stats or whatever we might do. But yeah, I watched his debut at Everton when he came on in the away end. It was a sparse away end that day, and an early kick-off on a Sunday we lost 4-1, but he came on. No one had heard of him. We didn't know how to pronounce his name. He got his goal, and that set him up for what was a pretty meteoric rise, really, over the next few years in his career. In his prime, like we talked about earlier, under Martin O'Neill, the trio of Young, Carew and Agbonlahor were literally unstoppable, and they scared the living daylights out of opponents and defenders. And for me, he was absolutely incredible in those few years. In his first full season of senior football under O'Neill, so once O'Neill got the job after O'Leary left, he sort of made him a regular starter, and he scored 10 goals in his first season, and always scoring goals against sort of key opponents as well, Chelsea, United and Liverpool. The next year he got 11. Again, another against United, a winner against Chelsea, and one in each of the Blues derbies that season, both home and away. He was a key player in the 5-1 demolition. Ran them absolutely ragged that day with Ashley Young. But later on that season, his 87th minute winner at St Andrews is literally one of probably the best moments of my life. I'd never experienced anything like that. That away end was absolutely incredible. I can't explain it better than anything I've ever seen since, even the Grealish one last season or whenever that was. And that set him up for an incredible time in the derbies as well, following on from that in the years to come. Next season, he scored 9 goals. One in the famous win at the Emirates, a winner at the Hawthorns. Again, he spooked Baggies as much as he did Blues. And then in 09-10 season, we've talked about a bit already, it was his best in the Villa shirt. He scored 15 that season. Another last-minute headed winner at St Andrews. You know, the scenes in that away end were just as good. We couldn't believe he'd done it again. The Blues fans couldn't believe he'd done it again. He'd been on the wind-up. He's always on the wind-up, but he actually backs it up as well. You know, a lot of players talk, but he backed it up in those big games. He scored a goal against Wolves, and again, in that same season, he got a historic winner in our 1-0 win at Old Trafford, which is the club's first win at Old Trafford in so many years. I don't know, but it was 25 plus, I think. And he played a key part in the Runstad Carling Cup final. He scored in the semi-final win against Blackburn, and then it was his pace that got him behind Vidic in the final that won us the penalty. And we know that day should have gone differently. It should have been a red card, and the players of that era should have probably got the trophy that they deserved. I think his career did peter out at Villa, undoubtedly. McLeish's football was never going to benefit Gabby. He only returned 6 goals that season. Then he did have a mini revival under Paul Lambert, where he scored another 10 goals in 12-13. And we know it did tail off, and people have questioned his attitude in the relegation season. But I do genuinely believe he was a victim of what was a long spiral of decline for the club. What he achieved for us in his prime, the incredible memories he gave us, and the goals he scored. Even at his chubbiest and in our worst, dullest championship season under Steve Bruce, his one and only goal that season was in front of the Holt End against Blues, when he'd just come off the bench, clattered somebody into the advertising hoardings, got the crowd going, and he sparked what was a terrible game of football. And that's just, for me, that's what stands out. People have argued that he's a disgrace, down tools, etc. But we were a shambles of the club at the time. He was being treated poorly by Remy Gard. And, it must have been painful for him as well. He loved the club. He loves the club as much as us. And he wasn't good enough anymore. That's not his fault. He wasn't good enough anymore. The players around him weren't good enough. The staff weren't good enough. The owners weren't good enough. And, I'm not one to say he was professional throughout and his attitude was exemplary. But, we're all human. We all have tough times. Nobody's perfect. And I think if he'd have finished his career in a brighter period, people would look back more fondly on him. But, I'm a positive person. When Gabby Agbonlahor comes into my head, all that comes flooding back is the good times, the memories, the away ends, the derby wins, the cup finals, Blues games, Baggies games, just everything he did for us. Even the consecutive away wins record under O'Neill that we haven't talked about, he was part of that.
Big part.
And for me, he's a club legend. I don't care what anyone says. You can debate it all night long with me. I'm ready to go.
I can see, mate.
And Gabby's got to be in there.
All right. Well, I'm conscious of time, so I won't let the others speak on this, and we'll vote on it in a minute. But I want to pick on two more players. One I'll go into a bit deep because this is a player that I absolutely love and I think should be in the top 5. And then another player that we all love, that all Villa fans love, that also deserves potentially a spot in the top 5 as well. And there's other players as well. There's players like Boateng or Barrow, J-Lo Samuel. There's loads of Tony Daly even played in the Premier League a little bit. There's plenty of players that have played for us that deserve a spot and deserve a mention. But it's hard. We have limited time to go through every single one. One player I like to mention. We've been talking about strikers a lot, and Gavi and Benteke in Dublin. A defender, centre-back defender, a player that a man is no longer with us, unfortunately, and a really, if you just look at what he's done, the impact he's made in the footballing world, very generous and kind man and an amazing person. But also, as importantly, he was an amazing player for Aston Villa, and that's Ugo Ehiogu. Came from West Brom back in '91. Didn't play too much in the first couple of seasons, but was eventually a replacement for Sean Teal and partnered along with Paul McGrath. Played a big part in the League Cup run in '94, and I remember he missed a penalty against Tranmere, hit the bar, but we still managed to get through. But he was still a vital player that season. Played a big part, like I said, but still vital. And then eventually, he formed a partnership with that famous back three of McGrath and Southgate and himself. And I really think, Ugo Ehiogu, because he played with so many good players, he may be slightly underrated, and not by me. I think even over Southgate, I think he was the better defender. I think Southgate got more plaudits and got the England caps, but I think Ugo for me was a better player, was a better defender, pure and out defender. He's got the '94 Cup winners medal. He wasn't really involved, but '95, '96 season he was amazing, and the Cup final he was amazing. That Cup run he was amazing. He became a regular for Villa. 300 appearances in all competitions, 15 goals. Actually, one thing that not many people know was he's the first ever black player to captain an England side. So he captained England in 21s against Netherlands back in 1993. So amazing milestone there. And considering what we're talking about as the top black players and his Black History Month, I think that needs to be mentioned. I know eventually he went to Middlesbrough, and it was a bit of under a cloud. But at the same point as you're making with Gabi, Chadsy, our club was sort of declining a little bit. Doug Ellis wasn't investing, and there was a severe lack of ambition. We just lost in the finals to Chelsea in the FA Cup, and I think that was a big part to play. If he'd won that, then maybe he would have stayed. But he went to Middlesbrough eventually for £80 million. There was a bit of West Brom had a 50% sell on apparently, so that's why that move took a bit of time. Middlesbrough, he won the League Cup there as well. I won't talk too much about that, but he had England caps. I remember I think he had debut in '96, and he scored when he was playing for Middlesbrough. Scored at Villa Park as well, that header against Spain. Just an amazing player. He was strong, he was quick, he was good in the air, he was decent on the ball. He used to drive out a defence with the ball. I remember that. He was one of the not many defenders did that. They'd hoof it, but he could hoof it, but he could also play out and sort of drive and run through midfield. And he was just an excellent player. And I think he allowed players like Southgate. He almost did a job like McGrath did. He tied it up. He was that player who did all the dirty work and allowed Southgate to be the one who got on the ball and started moves off. And Southgate got all the plaudits, but I think Ugo deserves a massive amount of respect, and he's one of the best defenders we've ever had in the Premier League era, and he's won trophies as well. And the person he is and the influence he's made on the game and what he's achieved, I think he definitely deserves to be in that top 5 category. I won't go too much into your thoughts because obviously we're running a bit short on time. So the last player I wanted to touch upon, just get your thoughts quickly, is Ian Taylor, a man Villa fans absolutely love and adore, a Villa fan, one of our own, a player who made the best of his ability. Let's be honest, he never gave up. He always fought, always gave 100%, and was box to box, a really dynamic midfielder, and chipped in with some really important goals. Dekkers, what's your memories of Ian Taylor as a youngster?
He was just a big presence on the pitch, wasn't he? And I think him being at Villa 9 years, he only scored 28 goals, but there were some really crucial goals in there. He scored in the League Cup final against Leeds, scored both goals in an away win at Cov, both goals in a win against Tottenham. So his goals will go down they're good memories, aren't they? For the goals that he scored. I not as a player, but I've seen him in away ends and things like that, and he's the club ambassador, and so not just as a player. I just think he's just a legend, isn't he, at Villa? So for me, that's why I'd have him.
Jugsy, your thoughts on Taylor?
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, he was a great player and made most of his ability, and he was a driving force in that midfield. But he's won us a League Cup, which is obviously one of the great attributes in terms of what we're looking for, in terms of judging people by their ability and how great they were in a Villa shirt. But yeah, I think he's a good representation of Villa fans. He's obviously the club ambassador. He represents us in different forums and different events and things like that. And just to see a Villa fan live out his dream, I think, like Gabby, it's just something that we warm to as fans. And he never gave up, and he never sort of gave a less than a 6 out of 10 performance, I thought, in a Villa shirt. He was pretty consistent as a player. And he probably wouldn't have the natural ability as some of the other players we've mentioned, but he never let us down as a fan.
Yeah, and he had a great partnership with Boateng later on and towards the end of his career, and them two were a massive driving force for how well we did under Gregory. Yeah, great player, great person as well, and like I said, a Villa fan, and made the best of his ability and came up with some crucial goals. Chadsy, just quickly before we start voting, your final thoughts on Ian Taylor?
Yeah, I just remember his sort of lung-busting, leggy runs from box to box. Like you said, he'd always breaking beyond the striker, the sort of player that was always sort of getting in behind to add that sort of third man run or be there for the flick on. But at the same time as doing that was nice, like you say, had a nice solid partnership in the middle with Boateng, loved the tackle, covered every blade of grass, good for a goal. So sort of your all round midfielder really. Like you said, made the most of his ability and lived out our dreams of playing for his boyhood club. And I think you have got to take into account the fact he won a trophy. I take into account, like Dekkers touched on, the fact that he's still a massive part of the club. My more recent memories of him being sat next to him at Blues Away and seeing him singing Go Mad as much as everyone else. So yeah, legend.
Yeah. All right, cool. Yeah, no, I think that says it all. So let's start voting then on players. We'll start with. The best way to do it is if you just pick your last two players, and then I'll tally up and see which players gets the most votes. So Chadsy, who are the two that you would pick out of all the arguments that we've made?
Yes, obviously Gabby goes straight in for me, and on hindsight, after all of the points presented and how much I loved him as well as a player and what he did, considering the squad he played in, for me, Benteke. I think just absolute quality player, really good, could play in any side, does it all, and he just makes it in for me. Everyone else had a valid case, but you can only pick two more.
All right, Dekkers, your choice. Who'd you go with? Who are the two that you go with?
Definitely Gabby, and then I'm torn between Dublin and Taylor, and it probably could change for me like every day. But today, right now, I'm going to go with Ian Taylor.
Okay, Ian Taylor. Right, Jugsy, your two picks.
Yeah, I'm influenced by Chadsy, so I'm definitely going Gabby after his monologue. Enjoyed that, to be fair. And because I'm fickle, even though I've sort of championed Benteke, again, I think Ian Taylor gets a nod.
All right, okay. Right, I'm going to... Well,
yeah,
full house for Gabby.
I think Ian Taylor just beats Benteke.
All right, okay, fair enough, okay. Well, full house for me, for Gabby, I think. I wasn't going to pick him. My original two picks were Ugo and Dalian Atkinson, but I think Dalian Atkinson is more nostalgia. You know, he's my first ever hero. But if we're going for the greatest Villa players, the greatest black players, and we're judging it on performances, what they've done for the club, what they mean to fans, and what they won as trophy, in terms of trophies as well, then I'm going to go for Gabby as well, and then I'm going to go for Ugo. I know he didn't get in, but I think he really should have got in. But unfortunately, you know, I think maybe you guys didn't see him as much as me. But yeah, I definitely think he should have got in. But oh well, that's what it is. But looking at the results, then the two that go in are going to be looking at the results. So Gabby got 4, Benteke got 1, Ugo got 1, and then last position. Well, and then Taylor got 2. So the last 2 slots are Gabby and Taylor. So just to confirm, the 5, Paul McGrath, number 1, and this is not in any order. Just top 5. Paul McGrath, number 1. Dwight York number 2,
Gabby.
Ashley Young number 3, Gabby number 4, and Ian Taylor number 5. That's who we've decided are the top 5 black players to play for Villa in the Premier League. There you go. Well,
Happy with
Who's
that.
going to play in the front?
I reckon Tails will do a job, doesn't he? I'm sure he will do a job. He's got the reach, isn't he? I'm sure he'll be fine.
Get Davy James in.
David James there. Bang on. I don't think we've had another black goalkeeper, have we? Apart from David James.
No.
We nearly signed
I think
that
we
French player. I can't remember what his name was, but he didn't come to us.
Mandanda.
That was it. Yeah, Stephen Mandanda. But yeah, all right. Well done, boys. Good conversation. Went on a bit longer than we thought, but I think we love those players so much. It's hard not to talk about them. So yeah,
enjoyed
that was
that.
good. Hopefully you guys agree. But this is our first ever YouTube video, so I'm going to say this for the first time. But leave your comments in the video and let us know who you think should have been in the top 5 and who you disagree with. And hopefully you agree with some of them. But it's one of those opinions, isn't it? It depends what era you were watching the game and who you have the fondest memories of. Gabby for me initially wouldn't have gone in, but then the way Chadsy described it, I think it's hard not to put him in, especially when he's our all-time Premier League goal scorer. So whoever it is, leave your comments below and let us know what you think. And also subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. We're not going to be doing too many regular videos, but all our audio podcasts will be uploaded, so you can listen to them on there. And then when there is a need to do a video and we think it's worthwhile, then we will do that. We are planning to do a special edition on video, and I won't let you know too much about that right now, but that should be something to look forward to in maybe next month or the month after, towards Christmas, and that'll be a good one. But now, just touching on the upcoming game on Sunday against Southampton, another tough test for Villa after Leeds. The winning run has come to an end. The streak has ended, as they say. It'd be an interesting game. Southampton in really good form and doing really well in the league, as Villa are as well. Obviously, in a great start by Villa, great start by Saints as well. Chadsy, what are your initial thoughts on the game, and how do you think the game will go?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a really tough test. They're in some good form. They lost their first 2 games of the season, but are unbeaten in 4 since. 10 points, I think it is, from 6 games. I think their poor start to the season was down to inside info from a few Southampton fans I've spoken to, saying that they were just to life without Højbjerg, and I think they had a few COVID issues as well. But I watched their game at the weekend against Everton, and they were just excellent. They press high, they've got a high line, and they look to win the ball back really quickly in the sort of final third if they do lose it. So, tactically, I think they're very similar in terms of Liverpool with that high line, and they just back themselves to win the ball higher up the pitch. But they're definitely there for the taking if we can sort of play quickly through that press, if that makes sense. So when we do lose the ball, they're going to be looking to get it back immediately. And if we can be progressive and have some confidence with our passing and exploit that high line, then I think the centre-back partnership are there for the taking, really. They're not that quick. And that's already been exposed by Son when Spurs beat them 5-2, by Zaha when Palace beat them, and in their other game against Chelsea when Timo Werner exploited them as well, even though they went on to get the point. So it's going to be a really interesting tactical battle, I think, because if they get their press right and they're on it, they're favourites for me. They're an established side that are strong and they're in good form. And it's going to be really, really interesting for us to see how we A, bounce back from a defeat, and B, sort of, can we do it again against a team that's sort of offering us that
it's a good litmus test for us, I think. That Leeds game was one of those games. I think Leeds can do that to any team. And if you have an off day, then they can do that. So this will be a more interesting game, I think, to see where we are currently in terms of our progression as a team, and how we're going to do in the Premier League. And Southampton will be a really tough test. Jugsy, what do you make of Southampton, and how do you think the game will go? And who are some of the key players that we should look out for?
Yeah, I think it'd be an interesting game. They beat us twice last season, so we should be out for revenge, and we won't be taking it lightly at all. But as Chadsy mentioned, they're quite direct in their play, so they're trying to get the ball up to their forwards quite quickly. Che Adams will normally drop off Ings, run the channels, and then Ings is obviously the sort of target man. I think danger man for them is probably, Ings obviously is a natural goal scorer, been in good form again this season. Redmond had a really good game against Everton last week, so he's looking dangerous on that left wing. And their fullbacks are quite attacking, so their two centre midfielders will hold. So Ward-Prowse and Romeu will hold. Fullbacks Bertrand and Walker-Peters, they're quite good in linking up with their wingers. So quite an interesting side, quite aggressive, I'd say, in the final third in terms of pressing the opposition. One is a game that we should look to be on the front foot with, and they're quite suspect to the counter-attack. So with our pace, their centre-backs aren't quick, as Chadsy mentioned, and I think they can sort of go over-expansive with their full-backs. So if we can get in behind, there'll be a threat in set pieces as well, so we need to be wary of that in terms of marking their centre-backs. But it's a team that I think we could counter-attack quite well. So I think it'd be an interesting one, and it's one that I think we expect a decent result out of. So I'm expecting a point at least.
You mentioned there countering, and very similar to the Liverpool game that Chadsy mentioned. If we're on form and players like Grealish and Watkins and Barkley are at their best, then potentially we can get something out of this game and do well and maybe even get a win. I mean, Dekkers, what are your thoughts on the game, and do you think Ollie Watkins is going to be key for this game for how well we do?
I think you covered most of it, but I think it'd be interesting to see how we bounce back from last week. 2 defeats on the trot will be it could hit the team hard, but then again, if we bounce back, it could
rejuvenate us.
Get us going again. So I think key is just keeping Shea Adams and Danny Ings quiet, and if we keep them quiet, we've definitely got the tools to take them apart. So with like you say, Watkins, Grealish, Barkley, McGinn, we've definitely got it in us to win the game. So it'd be it's an interesting one. I'm looking forward to it. If Mings and Konza and the whole back four are tight and can keep them quiet, then we're in with more than a shout. So
Chadsy, would you look to make any changes after the defeat against Leeds, or would you stick with the same side?
I think I'll stick with the same side. The obvious one everyone always talks about is when will Traore get a start over Trezeguet, but for me it's the same side. I just think tactically we've got to attack with pace in terms of we've got to look to create that chance quickly, because if we turn the ball over, we don't want to let them get back into a defensive shape. And I watched the Everton game last week, and Southampton were excellent. They completely nullified Calvert-Lewin, and Calvert-Lewin didn't really have any support. The Everton midfield were quite sluggish. Rodriguez, Sigurdsson, Dekkers, that they didn't get up and support him quickly enough, and by the time they got up and supported him, Southampton were back and set. So if we do lose the ball and they look to press us high, we've got to transition really quickly. Watkins, get Grealish, Barkley, begin running off him early. And if we can do that and be as clinical as we were against Liverpool, then we have got a really good chance. I think those centre-backs are there for the taking. Bednarek and Vestergaard, they're more up for an aerial duel, strong physical players, and don't necessarily fit the way Hasenhüttl wants them to play. And I think that's probably their biggest area that we want to exploit, but we can't do that unless we're really sharp with our passing. So no changes for me, just need to be on it in midfield. Leeds was an off day, like we talked about after the game. If we perform, we've got a chance without doubt, but we've got to pay them the respect they deserve. They're an established side, a very good side. They all know their roles. They've got a good work ethic. They've seem to have a good togetherness. And Danny Ings is a player that's absolutely on fire. So, for me, a draw would probably be a good result.
Would you look to change the shape of Villa, how we set up? Obviously, we slightly tweaked things against Leeds, and it didn't work. As we know, we lost 3-0. But would you look to make us a bit more solid and maybe go back to that 4-2-3-1 formation and have McGinn and Luiz sitting again, or would you look to change things up a little bit?
I'll probably consider that again, just to be a bit more solid. I think the one sort of change a lot of fans have earmarked is Trezeguet. I personally wouldn't go for Traore in this game, especially against Southampton. I think Trezeguet would be the best bet, just to obviously keep an eye on Southampton's fullbacks and Bertrand, so we can obviously track him back. So it's not a game that but maybe get McGinn to sit with Luiz again and just try and play on the counter and get Grealish not so full. alongside Watkins, maybe keep him tucked in again.
Yeah. Okay. And so I suppose before we end the show, let's get your predictions then. Dekkers, how do you think the game's going to go, and what do you think the final result will be?
I reckon Villa are going to come back out. I think last week could be the wake-up call that they needed after going on the after a great start. Bring us back down to earth. Maybe we're not going to walk through games. So I'm going to go with a Villa
3-1. Wow. Okay. All right. Optimistic. I like it. Jugsy, what were you going for?
I'm going for a 1-1 draw.
1-1 draw. All right. Thinking with your head there, I think. Chadsy, what are you going for?
Yeah, that's my gut. 1-1 draw. The optimist in me feels like we can win and we can nick it. I think it'll be tight, maybe 2-1, but I'll stick with 1-1.
I think it's probably a fair prediction. I think last weekend we saw the goals go back to a bit more normality, really. There weren't that many goals over the weekend compared to what it's been the first few weeks. So I do think maybe defences are getting a bit tighter and players are getting fitter and concentrating more, as we've alluded to it in some of our earlier podcasts. So I think I'm going to go for a draw as well, score draw, either 1-1 or 2-2. I think both teams are pretty evenly matched, and both teams have the ability to blow the other team out of the water, really, I think, depending on who's on form and who's off form. But if both teams play to the best of their abilities, then I think they're pretty evenly matched, and I'd expect both teams to finish near each other in the table this season. I certainly hope Villa do anyway, because I think Southampton will be comfortably mid-table. So yeah, I'm going for that result. But apart from that, really, thank you for your time, guys. This is, like I said, this is our first YouTube video. We hope you enjoyed the debate around the top 5 black players to play for Aston Villa in the Premier League. It was a really interesting discussion and brought back some amazing memories for me personally. And it was a tough choice. There's so many good players there that we could have picked. And we do this next week and it could be a completely different outcome. It's one of those things. But Chadsy, Dekkers, Jugsy, thanks for your time, boys. Appreciate it.
Cheers, Holmes.
Look forward to the Southampton game. We'll be back after the Southampton game with the lockdown lowdown, and hopefully we'll be reviewing a win. But apart from that, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Like I said, there won't be too many videos, but we'll be uploading all the audio podcasts as well. They're already out there now, so I've uploaded all of them. It's up to date. But also subscribe to our podcast on Apple, Spotify, or whatever platform you're on. We're all on the major platforms. Leave a review or rating on Apple if you're on there as well. It helps us a lot. But thank you for your time. And apart from that, up the Villa.
Up the Villa.
Go on the Villa, boys.
I love it. ਮੈਨੂੰ ਬਹੁਤ ਚੰਗਾ ਲੱਗਦਾ